to be the spirit world, or the existence that happens to our spirits after they leave our bodies. So I would tend to look positively upon many of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I've never had one, but I have had people on here, who've had those out of, body experiences. And I had a guest on the other night, I think Friday night, that when he was 10 years old, he was climbing a tree, fell off the tree, hit his head. Then he kind of like hovered over his body, and he could see his body. But then all of a sudden he saw the future, and that he was going to travel abroad. He was going to marry an Oriental lady. This is what he claims, and that he was going to become a writer of books, and then a professor and teach in college. And what he said is that when he got into school, he did really bad. He never made it through high school. And then when he was 39 years old, a friend said, hey, you can go back to college under the Mature, Act. This is in Canada. So he went to college, got his degrees, and started teaching. He went to China for the university, met a Chinese lady, got married. And it seemed like everything he was saying that, it transpired from his out of body, and he classifies that as mind time travel.
Yeah, we have this belief that that our limitations of what we can see, the physical or mortal experience we have now limits that, but that all things past, present, and future are before God, and so nothing happens that God does not understand or know about, and that sometimes perhaps in this spiritual realm, spiritual existence, we can get a glimpse of that and get a glimpse of things far in advance. So we certainly believe that things like that, would be possible. And I've always wished for some type of extraordinary experience. I can't say I've had one, but perhaps for some people, they're given that to help them make the right decision or help them accomplish what they need to in mortality. Our belief is, like I said, that as spirits we believe we actually are eternal beings, and that as spirits we existed before our birth, and that we all come to this mortality on earth at a certain time, in a certain place, in a certain situation. It's not random. And wherever that is a situation that's best suited to what we are capable of doing and what we're supposed to do. There's something that important that each one of us has to do in life. Whether we do it or not, of course, is up to us.
Well, how do you guys look in your church for people being reincarnated? I mean, do you guys recognize that?
Good question. We actually don't believe in reincarnation. Our scriptures tell us that this mortal life is the time for us to meet God, and that this mortal experience we have is a tiny portion of our eternal existence, but it's a very crucial one. And so this is the time to do our best, and there's no kind of second try, for example. So I've been interested in this ideas of reincarnation and how some people get these glimpses or have these impressions. And I know people of a more skeptical nature find ways to explain it all away. But it also may be that, as eternal beings, perhaps there are things that we have been witness to that may have occurred before our lives, before we came to this earth. But from a doctrinal point of view, we would say there's no reincarnation. We have one incarnation, and this mortal life is the important time to do our work. Yeah. That would be our church's position on that.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious because, there's some cases, and there's actually a lot of them, but one that comes to my mind, it seems were young kids, from 3 years old, and they kind of lose the ability around 7. But I'm going to talk about one case that happened out of the UK where this young kid, started telling his parents and, grandparents and anybody who would listen to him. He was a World War II fighter pilot. He would, name the people in his group. He would mention the model plane he flew, the air wing he was attached to. He would even go as far as saying that he was, under attack. His plane got shot up, it caught on fire, and it went down. And he knew the person's name, and he mentioned a whole bunch of other people's name. So when they did research on it, it all it appeared to, all fit in. And a 5-year-old, saying this is not something, that he read and remembered. And it's not just him. It's been so many other cases, like a child that remembers being on the Titanic, knew people's names, knew how the ship sunk, all this stuff. But the funny thing is, it kind of disappears when they reach around age 7. Now, I also had a hypnotist on here who was certified on my show, but he was a retired detective. And, he would take people in past regressions. And I asked him, I said, have you ever had a chance to check any of them out? And he goes, I did a few. And it matched right to everything. So it kind of like makes you wonder, if there is, past life. And, again, like what you're saying with your church, that the soul is waiting to pick the right parent to be born with. It just makes me wonder, then maybe there's a chance, that reincarnation can happen. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm sorry for cutting in, but I totally got something to say to this. What if somebody ends up dying and comes back to life? Now, check this. You know how the world is overpopulated, right? What if, in, let's say, the paranormal world, that place is overpopulated too? So every time that we get sent to a mortal life, and when we live the life 100 years, since the paranormal world is overpopulated, we just get sent back to a new life, yet we don't retain any of the memories of what we had in our previous lives. What if that is a possibility?
Well, and there are all sorts of what ifs. Like I say, for us, doctrinally, we would be opposed to the idea of reincarnation. So I can say I don't believe in it as it is currently talked about, and many people theorize about it and remember past lives. I'm quite familiar with the case of the young boy that thought he was or had a past life as a World War II fighter pilot. I've also read some very skeptical, and I think it's very very much in vogue for people to call themselves skeptics and sort of debunk everything. And I've read some skeptical research into that, kind of explaining away much of what the boy was saying. So our theology would say that the pilot who died did not come back and get born again. But who knows? Perhaps there was a connection between the spirit of the boy, this young boy we're talking about, and the spirit of the pilot who died. And perhaps before he was born, the spirit of that boy was able to witness these things and remember them, and didn't understand that he wasn't looking at his own life. So I could say from a Mormon point of view, we would say there is no reincarnation, and that we would stress the importance of our earthly life now to do the best we can with whatever light and knowledge we have. So that's going to be my answer on that. And of course, others may disagree.
Okay, so you're saying that basically they, as spirits, before the spirit, comes into the new birth, could have somehow communicated with a spirit of somebody who is deceased then.
A possibility, or observe that. Our belief is that there's much that we knew. We look at our existence before this life. We call it a pre-existence, in which we lived with heavenly parents. We believe ourselves literally, all of us, that we are literally spirit children of our Heavenly Father. For us, we call God Heavenly Father. That's not symbolic. We believe that's literally true. And so we lived as spirit children in this pre-existence, and we learned and observed and saw many things. And the veil was put over our minds when we're born that we forget that. So while we're on earth, we have to walk by faith. Otherwise, it would be like going to school and having answers to all your tests and getting 100%. You don't learn anything. But I have heard some stories about young children who seem to remember things, perhaps from this earlier spirit existence, and these things do fade as they grow older. Kind of similar to what you were talking about with this boy that that I don't know if it was he or his parents thought that because of what he was saying and seeing that he was this reincarnation of the pilot. As he grew older, these memories, these ideas faded.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That gives me a different idea about of your church. I don't know. What else can you tell us? I mean, you're the one that contacted me about it, and and like I said, I don't know much about other than my case. And I will say this, and I don't want you to take it wrong, but like when I was in broadcasting, I didn't know that the station was owned by a Mormon family, and I was doing my show, and all of a sudden, there was two elders of the church, and I can't remember, missionaries or whatever, came down with a slide projector and instructed I had to watch this slide set about the church. And I mean, I'm funny. My parents taught me growing up when I was a kid that, again, because we had Mennonite and, we had a couple other religions in our family. They said, you know what, son? You go to a couple different churches, go to a couple different religions, and go to the church you feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was my upbringing, bringings to, religion. And I went to a Catholic church. I went to, a Protestant church, and that's where I ended up going. It's a Protestant church. I will say this one radio station I worked at that was owned by Mormons, I did go to a couple of the, services, and, I don't know. It's really hard. I don't know if you find that, but if you were brought up or one religion to try to adapt to another religion.
Oh, I certainly believe that, and I've seen that with people that come to our church later in life. There are some challenges there. I'm not sure about your experience. It sounds like maybe the owners of this radio station were a bit heavy-handed in their approach, and we try to do things a bit differently these days, and we really try and respect people's beliefs and try and look for areas of commonality. Now, I was a missionary myself many years ago, and so there's just, as you've seen, what missionaries go around and teaching about what we do. I did that. I was a missionary in Argentina.
Oh, wow. How long did you do that in Argentina?
Well, it's being called on a mission is that period of time, and so it lasts 2 years, and that was the time of my missionary service.
Yeah. Now, Kevin, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no, I totally lost my train of thought. But basically, what I was going to say is take all the knowledge that you can get from every religion and basically choose which religion is best after you retain all the information you can get.
Okay.
That is my info.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. We actually believe there is goodness and there is truth in many different places. And I know there are some people with a very conservative Christian viewpoint that would look at non-Christian religions as being wrong and incorrect. We think that there is actually truth all over the world in many different places. Our view is not that our church, our belief started with Joseph Smith. We actually trace it back to Adam and Eve. And so if Adam and Eve had truth from God, then it would have sort of disseminated throughout all the world, and you may find bits of goodness and truth practically anywhere.
That's interesting. Now, how's your church take like UFOs, for example, alien life from other planets? I mean, I know what's your view, but does a church have any stance on life out there in the universe with other planets and people, or
That's an interesting question. And there's nothing officially right now, but I can tell you some things kind of about our origin, I think, to shed some light upon that. Unlike sort of a traditional Christian viewpoint, and of course this has changed with science, but Joseph Smith taught back in the early 1800s that this earth was not the first earth ever created, and Adam and Eve were not the first people ever made, just the first people relative to us on our planet. They're our primal mortal parents. And he even taught that there were that the creations of God were limitless and were in the entire universe, and that there were